Hey everybody, I'm back. I have to take the first few seconds of this video and say thank you to everybody who decided to offer a donation to me for our fundraiser to get a new computer for editing videos on. The fundraiser was successful. We were able to raise enough to purchase a computer, and so we're back on YouTube. We had donations ranging anywhere from $2 to $150, and every single one of them was appreciated. If you like, you can go back to the donation page and see a list of who donated. But for myself, each and every one of those was precious, and I want to say thank you equally to all of them. We had over 40 different people decide that they wanted to make a donation, so thank you for that. So, moving on. The first thing I thought we would do coming back to YouTube is build soil. I thought it was a good way to try to get back into the game and show you what we really want to have on our channel. With that, I have to give you a shout out to my friend Blake Kirby over at the Daddy Curbs Garden, or Daddy Curbs Farm. Blake is a great guy. He's a fellow gardener here on YouTube. We chat on the side, and I have worried him to death about making compost, to the point where he very nicely mentioned, Jared, you don't need a measuring cup. So I don't know what it is about compost. I've done things all around my property that cost money, that failed, that I tried again, and whatever. And here I am with nothing but trying to make compost, and it's worried me to death. I must have watched 100 different videos, seen Blake's own video several different times, and asked him a lot of different questions on the side, and I don't know what it is. Something about making compost, I'm just like, oh, I'm going to completely ruin this and waste my time and waste my resources, but he assures me that I can do it. So y'all make sure you support Blake over there for giving me the encouragement to finally get down and actually try building some soil by making compost. So here's how we're going to do it. I'm a very spatically minded person. It helps me a lot to be able to see something and be able to visualize it. And I just could not visualize a straight pile and understand how that equated to a certain volume. So Blake, in his video and in his talks with me on the side, really turned me on to the idea of going ahead and using a wire cage. Now this cage that I'm using is the same cage that we used early in spring to grow sugar snap peas on. I've cut a little bit off the top of this, and what I now have is a 3-foot wide, 4-foot high cylinder. And that equates to just under 1.5 yards, or just barely over 1 cubic meter volume. So that's what we're going to fill and make our compost with. We're going to fill it with a wide variety of manures, hay, and some grass clippings, as well as some leaf litter. So let's get on to it. So the first thing I'm going to start with is just a bit of hay. This is just out of square bale that you can get from any farm co-op or just about anywhere. If you can't find hay, well, I say that. There's plenty of times a year it's hard to find hay. But I'm going to start with just a nice base of my carbon, mainly because having not done this before, I like the idea of having a firm foundation. And now I'm just going to start layering things. I'm going to bring in a layer of goat manure. I'm going to bring in a layer of grass clippings, or a layer of rabbit manure, or a layer of leaf litter, and I'm just going to start stacking this up. So let's get on with it. So if you're like me and you're watching this because composting is not your forte, and you're kind of wondering how all that takes place, what we're doing here is a hot composting method, and it's a variation off of the Berkeley composting method. The Berkeley being the college in California, or university, or whatever it is, and they did the studies to come up with the ratio between carbon and nitrogen and so on and so forth, and what was going to work out best so that you could make compost in 18 days. And there's just some twists and variations on that, and they came up with the volume that you needed to try to make it hot enough so that it did decompose in that amount of time, or compost in that amount of time, and so forth. And essentially, you're searching for a proper ratio of carbon and nitrogen. Carbon primarily being your woody materials, anything from actual chipped up wood, leaves, straw, and those kind of things that are high in carbon, to nitrogen, products that are more rich in nitrogen, from fresh grass clippings to manures from animals, vegetable leftovers off your table, and things like that. And you search for, or you aim for, a ratio of about 25 to 1. So a little more carbon than nitrogen. And in doing so, you create the right amount of heat without going anaerobic, and get the decomposition done in time and all that kind of good stuff. So that's what we're going for. Now, Jeff Lawton and most permaculturists do a bit of a variation on this. And the Berkeley method, I should say, is a half and half method. You're using half of what they consider a green material, manures, fresh grasses, fresh vegetables, things like that are high in nitrogen, low in carbon, and half high carbon products. And then doing the rest of the method pretty much the same. Jeff Lawton and most permaculturists do a bit of a different thing, which ends up giving you more nitrogen, less carbon, and still producing compost in 18 days. So the difference is, instead of doing half and half, we instead break up the nitrogen into two different areas. We say that there is an area that is specifically manures, and we say that there is an area that is specifically vegetation, nitrogen-rich vegetation. And in doing that, you say you take a third of each. So you have a third of your brown high carbon material, a third of your nitrogen rich material, and a third of your animal manures. And like I say, with that mixture, if you do the math, looking at it from a Berkeley side of things, you're actually doing 1/3 brown, 2/3 green. And so it's a bit of a variant, but we're still going to adhere to all the other standards the same. We're going to rotate the compost the same amount, and so on. So I'm going to keep stacking these things up. And one thing I'll bring you in on in the middle is we're going to do an activator, which is a way to kind of get the heat really started inside of this so that it starts the compost off a little bit quicker. So I'll bring you back when I get to that point. One thing I'll be using a lot of is this. These are the cleanouts from our 2 rabbit cages. And you can see there's a good bit of hay mixed in this. Rabbits aren't the most efficient eaters when it comes to hay, and a lot of it falls through onto the floor along with their manure. But rabbit pellets are highly desirable and will incorporate into this well. And this helps a bit because it's kind of pre-mixed. So I've already got a certain carbon to nitrogen ratio on here, brown to green material. So you're going to see me dump several buckets of this into our compost pile. I apologize for nearly forgetting to mention, you do need to keep this wet. We'll talk a little bit more about just how wet later, but if you wait until you have all your material on before you start putting water on this, you're going to have a heck of a hard time trying to get it as moist as it needs to be. So every few inches of material here, go ahead and give it a real good soaking. Now you may be asking yourself, is there a correct time of the year to compost? And the best answer to that is that you can compost any time in the year, but the best time to compost is when everything's naturally start to decompose in your area. So here in the temperate North American climate, we're wanting to do this mostly over winter, because that is when decomposition is happening. The leaves have fallen from the trees and Mother Nature is decomposing things all on her own. Our herbaceous plants have grown, died back, fallen to the earth and are decomposing, and so on. And in making compost, what we're doing is speeding up nature. So the best time is when everything's normally decomposed. You also have the added benefit that it's not going to be as hard as to make sure that your pile stays wet. Ideally, I could put this off for another month, but I want to show you what I'm doing before you may need to do it yourself. And I want to have my first practice run out of the way before I really put this into full swing throughout the winter, because I have a lot of compost that I want to make. So let's see, I'm getting a lot of seepage coming out on the ground, so I'm going to stop there and keep layering my piles. The single largest source of nitrogen you're probably going to have on your property is poultry manure. And I'm not going to use very much because I want to try to maintain that correct ratio of carbon to nitrogen, and I'm not using materials that have very much high carbon. I'm going to put a little bit of wood chips in, more for diversity than anything, but I'm not going to be putting in, a half a cubic yard of it or anything. So I don't need to worry about trying to bring down the carbon so much with such low nitrogen. But this is still going to be a great way to really start off the compost pile, make sure it gets good and hot, and starts cooking in place really well. One of the high carbon ingredients that I'm using is some leaf litter from off the forest floor, and I've thrown this through my leaf shredder so that it has more surface area, so the microbes and things can work on this better, and it'll decompose more evenly and quickly. So this is one of my high carbon items in the compost. One thing we can do to add a little bit of a boost and get the compost pile started off quickly is add an activator. And this is either going to be some sort of an animal product, like I'm also going to use a chicken that passed away, or it can be certain vegetation products like this plant, comfrey. So what I'm going to do, comfrey is a great plant all around. It brings up minerals from way below the soil surface, and those minerals are going to get added back to our compost. It's also, it's not the only plant that we can use for this. We could use yarrow as well. I believe there's some others that just aren't coming to mind. But we don't want too much of this. We want it to be less than 5% of the overall pile. So don't think that just because it's an activator and a good thing that you need a lot of it. As the saying goes, you can have too much of a good thing. So we're going to use a bit of comfrey, and we're also going to use a chicken that's passed away as an activator in our compost. Okay, so here you can tell we're at a halfway point in our pile. And so what I'm going to do is just take this comfrey, I'm just going to tear it up into some pieces, right into the center of the pile. That's what we're looking for with our activator. We want it to be right in the center of the pile. Think about it maybe if you build fires, or if you make coals for a charcoal grill. You want that hot spot right in the middle. That's what you're trying to do, is speed up that hot spot. And so then, excuse the gruesomeness, I've got a dead chicken here that's a couple days old, and we're going to add her right to the middle. And that's one of the nice things about this compost. You might think, well, Jared, you're going to have chicken bones in your garden. That's not really very appetizing, but I won't. You'll be surprised here in just a couple days, even on the first turn in day 4, we may not even recognize that chicken. Certainly by day 6, we shouldn't see any of her at all. So with our activator in place right in the center of the pile, we're going to complete this pile all the way up to the top, making sure we keep it wet throughout. The purpose again of this activator is to start off the heat, to get a real quick boost of heat right away to the compost pile. Okay, well, there it is. You can see we've got it piled 4 foot high, 3 foot wide. That's about almost 1.5 cubic yards of material. We've wet it down throughout the entire process. We're going to cover it to try to retain the moisture and the heat, and we'll come back in 4 days and show you how to pull this off, turn it back inside out so we can take what's on the outside, put it on the inside, and so on. I'm going to thank my wife in advance. She told me that if I would help get this started, she'd make sure that even if I got pulled away for something else, that it would get turned at the appointed time. One of my biggest fears about starting this hot composting method is that after 4 days from the initial pile, on day 4 you rotate it. And then every 2 days after that, all the way up to day 18, you rotate it again. And just the way life is, I've been worried that, you know, on the day I'm supposed to rotate this around, that I'm not going to be available and I'm going to miss a day. And she's helping me and saying she'll make sure that it gets done no matter what. So here we are. Wish us luck, and we'll bring you back and let you know how the whole process goes. Thank y'all for watching. We'll see you next time.